Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning a beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called בשלום. The Rebbe said this Chassidic discourse, Shabbos Parshas Witzא, which was the 10th day of the month of Kislev, in the year Tafshin Memvav, 39 years ago. The Rebbe went on to certify and edit this Chassidic discourse in honor of the 9th and the 10th day of the month of Kislev in the year Tafshin Nun Aleph, 34 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse where it says in Psalms, בשלום נפשי, my soul was redeemed in peace, mikravli, from those that were close to me, ki berabim hayu imadi, because many were with me. That's the literal translation of the verse. Again, many different translations, but that's the basic translation. Hopefully today we're going to learn a deeper insight. The Rebbe says it's known that besides to the simple insight of this verse, that King David is referring to him being redeemed. In other words, that Hashem redeemed him from the wars that came upon him. So also in this verse is also hinted to the idea of the redemption of many righteous people. And how much more so the redemption of the righteous people that said this verse while they were redeemed. And the Rebbe says to point out all the three redemptions of the Chabad Rebbeim. In other words, the redemption of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe, on the day of Yutes Kislev, the 19th day of the month of Kislev, the redemption of the Middle Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, which was on the 10th day of the month of Kislev, and the redemption of the previous Rebbe, which took place on the 12th day of the month of Tammuz. So all those three people said this verse on the day that they were redeemed. And the Rebbe points out specifically. So we know that when it came to the redemption of the Alter Rebbe on Yutes Kislev, we know what it says, that the Alter Rebbe said in a famous letter of his, and he says as follows: when I read in Psalms the verse, בשלום נפשי, then I went out in peace from through God in a peaceful way. So that's the Alter Rebbe writes it specifically about himself. In reference to the redemption of the Middle Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe on the 10th day of Kislev, so we know that the Chabad Rebbeim would say the section of Psalms, the way it's divided up, where every single day of the month you say several different Psalms. And since the verse בשלום נפשי is in the section of the day of the month, the 10th of the month, so in other words, the day that he was redeemed, the 10th of Kislev, he said this verse. That's what the Middle Rebbe. And in reference to the redemption of the previous Rebbe on the 12th day of the month of Tammuz, so we know that it's a custom of the Chabad Rebbeim that in certain times and in certain situations they would add, besides the fact they said the section of the day of the month, they would also say the section of Psalms, the way it's divided up based on the days of the week, besides the one that they said for the month. And since that year, Yud Beis Tammuz, in the year Taf Reish Pei Zayin, which is the year that the previous Rebbe was redeemed from prison, that day was on Tuesday, the third day of the week, and the verse בשלום נפשי also is in the way the Psalms are divided up on the third day of the week on a Tuesday. So obviously the previous Rebbe said this psalm on the day of his redemption. And it's explained elsewhere that the connection of the redemption of the 10th of Kislev, which is referring to the Middle Rebbe, to the verse בשלום נפשי, in a certain component, it's much more powerful than the redemption of the Alter Rebbe on the 19th of Kislev and the previous Rebbe on the 12th of Tammuz. Why? Because since this verse is on the 10th day of the month, so the connection to the redemption of the 10th day of the month obviously plays out every single year. By the Alter Rebbe, he said it on that then. By the previous Rebbe, it's that was on Tuesday, but the Yud Beis Tammuz doesn't always fall out on Tuesday. However, when it comes to the redemption of the Middle Rebbe, that always falls out on the 10th day of the month. Now, we know the explanation of the Middle Rebbe who was celebrating his redemption on a Chassidic discourse. which is actually printed in his classical book of Shari Tshuva, the Gates of Repentance. So he points out over there that this verse that says, Pada b'shalom nafshi, that my soul's redeemed in peace, and it's besides the fact that he was redeemed, that in itself is an amazing thing, but also the way he's redeemed. He was redeemed in a way of peace, shalom. In other words, he was redeemed without any war, without any confrontation. And he explains over there that the true level of peace is, what's peace? Where there's no opposition. And he gives the example, like in the times of King Solomon, that all the nations of the world were totally nullified to him. In other words, what is the intent is? What does that mean? Because as long as there's opposition, even though they're not fighting with you, but if there's opposition out there, and yes, maybe they're afraid, but the fact is that's not real peace. Because the fact is, if there's opposition, and even though they're being restrained for whatever reason, but it's possible they're going to wake up and do war. So what's real peace? So not only in reality there's no war, but it's not even possible that there should be war. That's the ultimate in peace, where there's no possibility of war. And that's why the peace that took place in the days of King Solomon, and matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why he's called Shlomo, because Shlomo comes from the word of shalom. In his days it was peace. Why was that? Because the nations of the world were totally nullified. They were totally sitting and behaving. Why was that? Because King Solomon was so great. And what happens when the opposition is totally nullified, it means there's no room for them to wage war. That's the ultimate of peace. And that's why we know that Hashem said to King David, when he wanted to build a temple, no, you can't build the temple for me. Why? Because you're a man of war. Now, even though when King David wanted to build a temple, everything was peaceful, and Hashem caused that all the enemies should stop bothering him, but the fact is, the way he achieved peace was through war, and not that they totally were nullified. He had to fight it. And so, nevertheless, since there was still opposition, and there's a possibility they're going to go ahead and wage war, that's not the ultimate in peace and relaxation. And that's why it says, Pada b'shalom nafshi, that the redemption was in a way of peace, which means that the opposition is totally gone, just like in the times of King Solomon, where there's no opposition because they were so afraid of him. And he continues on the Chassidic discourse to say that what's the highest level, the true level of that your soul's redeemed in peace. So till now we learned one level was, it's peaceful. Why? Not like King David where he got rid of them, but he had to fight it. Or not like King Solomon, the next level, where basically they totally wouldn't start up because he was so powerful. No. The deeper level of peace is that those that were originally in opposition, those were initially that hated you, they actually become lovers of you. They actually become transformed. They become your biggest advocates. And this idea is higher than what took place in the days of King Solomon. Why? Because when the days of King Solomon, they were totally nullified. Because why? Because King Solomon was so powerful. But they didn't become real friends. They didn't become holy. But what's the true peace? That the opposition actually becomes a supporter. And when is that going to happen? This highest level? No, when is it going to happen? When Mashiach comes. Like it says clearly in the prophets, Oz, Ephai, Chal Amim, Safa Brura, Love the Ishchemecha, when Mashiach comes, the any and all opposition that existed before, even though they were like dormant, they will become true lovers of Hashem. Now, but the fact is, 1 second, so what did we just learn? That the lowest level was in King David. He won the war, but it took war. King Solomon's higher. Mashiach comes in the highest level. But King David is the one that says, Pada b'shalom nafshi. Now, the fact is, in King David's days, the opposition wasn't nullified. And how much more so, it wasn't on the highest level like Mashiach comes, they're going to be transformed to holiness. Because what didn't even exist in the days of King Solomon. Scranton in the future says. So the Winkler explains, the one that's celebrating his redemption, that it's referring to on King David, not the way he was then, but the way King David's going to be in the future when Mashiach comes. Now, the Rebbe says, based on what we know, that what Chazal tell us, that when they take retribution from somebody, they do it midaitoi or shaloi midaitoi. In other words, from his knowledge and not from his knowledge. Or like, for example, din v'chesh, when they make a judgment, you ultimately make the judgment on yourself. What does that mean? When a person goes ahead and gives a ruling about someone else, what you're really ruling is about yourself. In other words, so when the Mittler Rebbe went along and he said, Pada b'shalom nafshi, that my soul will be redeemed in peace, and like we learned, what does Pada b'shalom nafshi mean? That the opposition is totally nullified, like the first level, like King Solomon, and more so, like what's going to be that the opposition becomes actually a lover, becomes an advocate, like what's going to be like a Mashiach comes. So he actually ruled upon himself that his level of redemption in peace, the redemption of his redemption of the 10th of Kislev, and how, and obviously from here it's understood also in reference to the Alter Rebbe Yitzchok Kislev and in reference to the previous Rebbe on Yud Beis Tammuz, that the peace that existed in their redemption was that the opposition was totally nullified, and not only that, but it actually was transformed into someone that supported and advocated for peace. Now, the simple idea of explaining the verse, Pada b'shalom nafshi, literally, that my soul was redeemed in peace. In other words, King David was talking about the way the redemption was in this world, and that the redemption was in peace. So if that's the case, we have to understand the connection between, based on what we learned in the Chassidic discourse, that when King David says Pada b'shalom nafshi, he's not referring to the way it was in this world. He's actually referring to the way his soul is going to be in the future. With the literal translation that he's talking about is redemption right now, which was not in the highest level. So how do we connect the two? The Rebbe says we could possibly can say, based on what the Rambam says, that when in the Torah, where it speaks about the Torah portion of Bilam, where he prophesizes about the future. So in the prophecy of Bilam for the future, he talks about two Mashiachs. Two Mashiachs. Who is the first Mashiach? The first one is King David, and the future Mashiach, the future Messiah, is going to be an ancestor of King David. There's two Mashiachs. So obviously you can say, why is King David considered the first Messiah? Because everything that's going to be accomplished through the King Messiah, the last Messiah, is started with King David, who was the first Messiah. But the completion and the fulfillment of it in the complete way is going to be in the future with the ultimate Mashiach, which will be an ancestor of King David. So based on this, Rebbe says that we can connect the two ideas of Pada b'shalom nafshi. You know, just like when King David, it was he's the Mashiach, the first one, and the future is going to be a spin-off of the first one. So the same thing also between the idea of Pada b'shalom nafshi, that in an internal way, the previous, an internal way, even the redemption of King David now was also on the level of peace. What does that mean? All the opposition went away. Not only they didn't fight with him, but they actually they actually loved him, they supported him. However, in the times of King David, when it was in this world, it was an internal way and it was concealed. However, Mashiach comes, it's going to be in a revealed way that the ultimate, you're going to have the ultimate peace. So based on this, we'll understand even more so the tremendous, great accomplishment of the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe on Yud Kislev. So this is what we say, that it was Pada b'shalom. And as without saying that it's a redemption of peace in reference to the future. So obviously, what was the peace? That the opposition was totally nullified, and not only that, the opposition became a total advocate, and it happened what? In a revealed way. Okay. So Rebbe says that it's known that when it comes to Shabbat and Yom Tov, so we all know that you have to prepare before Shabbos. There's something which is called Erev Shabbos, before Shabbat, and there's something which is called Erev Yom Tov, where you prepare for Yom Tov. And the same thing also, in our case, the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe, which took place on the 10th day of Kislev. So what is the preparation? Just like you have Erev Shabbat and Erev Yom Tov, you have Erev, the day before Yud Kislev. The day before the 10th. What is the day before Yud Kislev? Which is a preparation for the 10th of Kislev. That's the 9th of Kislev. What's the 9th of Kislev that prepares for the 10th of Kislev? That is the day of the birthday and the anniversary of the passing of the Bala Geula of the Mittler Rebbe. Now, so just 1 second. What are we saying? That the 9th, which is David's birth and his passing, prepares for David's redemption. But the fact is, his redemption on Yud Kislev is what? In the year Tafkuf Pei Zayin, which was a year before he passed away. So we're saying is that the passing away was a preparation for his redemption. He passed away a year later. But there says, no. There's a rule, megalgalin schus liyom zakai. If something happens on a certain day, it's not because it happened on that day. That day was ripe for that thing to happen. So if he was born on that day, there was something ripe for it to happen, he should be born that day. And if he passed away that day, it's also ripe that he should be passed away that day. So even though he technically passed away a year later, but the day before 10th of Kislev already had within it the energy of his passing away. So you can say that the 9th of Kislev, it was the 9th of Kislev merited that should be the day that the Winkler passed away, because obviously it has a connection to his passing away. So based on what the Rebbe says, we now will understand the tremendous quality of the Winkler Rebbe, that he was redeemed on the 10th of Kislev. And like we said, that the idea of redeeming a soul was in a way compared to what it's going to be like in the future when Mashiach comes. Why? Because the day before is the day of his Yom Hilulah, the day that he passed away. Okay, so what does that mean practically? So now we're going to go into a deep journey about the whole idea of passing away, the spiritual energy of someone passing away. So we'll understand this based of introduction, what the Mittel Rebbe, who is again is the person that's celebrating his redemption, in a Chassidic discourse that he has titled La'havin Inyan HaHilula de Rashbi, to understand the whole idea of the Hilula, the big celebration of the Rashbi, which is referring to the day he passed away. In other words, the day of the passing of the Rashbi is called the Hilula. It's strange. He's passed away. So why is it called a celebration? Why? So he explains, because through the Rashbi, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, he accomplished the revelation of the secrets of the Torah, Pnimiyat Torah. And he explains over there with an introduction what Chazal tell us. It says as follows: Hai Alma de Azlinan Minei. This world that we're leaving from is Kavehi Lula Damya. It's like a house of celebration where people get married. Again, recap, because we're going into this verse in depth. Hi Alma Desliminei. This world that we're leaving is Kavehi Lula Damya. It's like a house of weddings. In other words, what does that mean? Because when the soul comes down to this world, Hi Alma, this world. So what happens is the soul becomes azlinon, the soul becomes a mover, the soul becomes a shaker, the soul becomes a mahalach. Why is that? Because the souls, the way they're on high, they're oindim, they're standing. Yes, before they came into this world, they're a higher world, but they're standing. Like it says, the verse says, Chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael asher manti lefonav. In heaven we're standing. And the Zohar it says, every soul was standing, Kaima was standing, b'diyukna on its level, Kaim al Kadisha. So before the soul comes down to the world, it's a oimid, it stands. In other words, even though the souls, the way they are on high, but the fact is they are in a level of Rotzi v'shuv, they're moving and backwards and forwards, etc., and that's the way they get elevated in the higher worlds. But the fact is, all their elevations that take place in the higher worlds is finite elevations. Even the highest level that they reach, that the souls get elevated, it's also it's limited. It's limited, and that's why it's called Oimdim. Because yes, they're moving. Obviously, they're moving. It's alive. The souls are alive. They're moving, but it's only finite. But when the soul comes down to this world, you know what happens? They become mahalchim. They become really, really moving. What does that mean? That the elevation of the souls when they come down here is in a level of infinite and without any limits. And that's why it says that world that they left. In other words, the souls, the way they are on their level, they're oimdim, they stand. But when they come down into this world, they become a halchim, they become move, and that's linon. That's where they become an ozl, that's where they're able to go. Now what's the reason? That specifically, through this world, we become an ozl, we become someone that's moving, because this world is a behi lula damya. This world is a party world. Because it's a party world, which will explain what that means, and Kabbalistically, that's why we become a halach. So what does that mean, that this world is a party world? And the Rebbe explains like this. We know that the soul and the body, everyone has a soul and everyone has a body. So that's on a spiritual level like a man and a woman, in other words. Just like literally, you have a man and you have a woman. So in order to unify the man and the woman, like for example, Zachar and Nekeva, which we know are two opposites. Man is, what they say, men is from Mars, woman is from Venus, but let's keep it to Kabbalistic terms. They're totally two opposites. So how do you unify the man and the woman, the male and the female? So you bring in a power which is called the Koyach Ein Sof, the infinite part of Hashem, which is above the two. And because it's above the two, it has the power to unify the Zachar and the Nekeva, the Ish and the Isha. And this power comes in them, and it actually gets revealed that because the Koyach Ein Sof, the infinite part of Hashem, unites the man and the woman, that's why they have the power to give birth. In other words, in order to give birth, generation after generation, infinite, we can't do that. How do we have the power to create a child? But we do have the power because we house within us the koyach ein soif, the infinite part of Hashem, which is higher than the limitations of the creation, which comes in through marriage. So the same thing also, that's about man and woman, zachar and nekeva. The same applies to a soul and a body, which is similar to a man and a woman. In order to create the union between the soul and the body should stick. That's because the koyach ein soif, the same koyach ein soif that unites man and woman, that's the same koyach, the power of infinite that unites the soul and the body. Now, this powerful level of koyach ein soif, where does it play out? Where does it get revealed? It gets revealed, like I said, like for example, now husband and wife is by having children. So what's the spiritual children of a soul and a body? What is the offsprings of a tzaddik? That's the good deeds. In other words, that the elevation that takes place by learning Torah and by doing mitzvahs, that causes us to get elevated on a level of ein soif without any limit, a bleak vul, literally no limit. By learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, you unite the soul with the body and you're able to grow infinitely. And that's why it says, Hi Alma, that world, this world. The Azlina Minei, it's like a Behi Lula. Why? Because specifically, that in this world that we're in, we have the power to become mahalchim, to move, because this world is like a place which is basically a behi lula, which means it unifies the soul, which is the spirituality, with the body, which is the physicality. That's the world, which is similar to the union of a chatan and a kala, and a union of a chatan and a kala. What's it called? It's a hilula. It's a big celebration, and through that you bring in the power of the infinite part of Hashem. We know, just like the soul coming down to the body. Why does the soul come down to the body? It's not to come down to the body to be stuck in the body. No. It's coming down. It's a downgrade. But the purpose of the downgrade, the soul leaves the infinite part of Hashem and comes into a physical body. It's because of the upgrade. It's going to happen afterwards. So, and the same applies to Torah and mitzvahs also. The reason why Torah is Hashem, and the mitzvah Hashem came down to this world is to create an upgrade into the Torah and to the mitzvahs. Because when the Torah and mitzvahs come down to this world, and the mitzvahs aren't spiritual, Torah is not spiritual, it's talking about physical mitzvahs, well, what happens is we actually bring in the essential part of the Torah and mitzvahs. So based on this, we'll understand that the idea of a hilula, the celebration that takes place by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs in this world, it not only upgrades the person doing it, it actually upgrades the Torah and the mitzvahs. And as besides the fact that by learning Torah and the mitzvahs, you're creating a celebration, you're creating an upgrade in the person that's learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and it's by drawing in the power, the infinite part of Hashem, which comes through the union of the soul and the body, but also in the Torah and mitzvahs itself become a celebration. Why is that? Because what's Torah? What's mitzvot? That's the Torah is the wisdom of Hashem, and the mitzvah is the will of Hashem, which is obviously higher than the world. And by uniting them with the physical world, like by doing the physical mitzvot and learning the Torah the way it applies to this physical world, we're actually unifying two opposites, with godliness and physicality. And this union, how do we create the union of opposites? By bringing in the essence of the Torah mitzvahs, just like, for example, the union of a chatan and kala, by bringing in the infinite part of Hashem, which obviously is above that. And he continues on the Chassidic discourse to Mittler Rebbe, another insight into the idea of that world that Azlina we leave from. And he explains like this: when a person passes away, it means when the soul leaves the body, the Azlina, meaning the soul is now leaving the body, then you have the ultimate Azlinan. And that's when you become the ultimate shaker mover. Till now he said that in this world you become the shaker mover. Now he's saying a whole different idea, that when you leave the world, that's when you become the shaker. What does that mean? According to the explanation before, that the soul becomes a mover is down in this world. Down in this world it becomes a mover. And what does it mean, Azlin Manei? It's because of being in this world, so you come to the level of a mover, which means you become a mahalach. And that's because of being in this world. But according to what he's saying now is, that the soul becomes a mover It's when he leaves, when you leave the world. It happens at the end of the process. What does that mean? And he explains like this in the Chassidic discourse. In those mitzvot, the way you do them in this physical world, any mitzvah, kashrut, Shabbat, mezuzah, tefillin, any mitzvah you do in this world. So the fact is, they're finite. A mitzvah is finite. Even Torah that we're learning in this world is also finite. Like it says in reference to Torah, it says, Arucha me'eretz mida. It's longer than anything you can measure. But the fact is, it does have a measurement. Torah, it's quantitatively. Obviously, it's much longer than we can measure, but it's still a finite study, and it's still a finite mitzvah. So therefore, the movement, the halicha, the movement, which basically is referring to the infinite part, that the soul gets affected by learning Torah and doing mitzvahs in this world, it's concealed. True, we're becoming a mover, but the fact is, because it's finite, it's concealed. And even the part of the soul that starts moving, like for example, let's say a husband and wife get together, boom, you have a child. Now, so even though when you have a child, how can you have a child? How does a husband and wife have a child? Obviously, it's coming from the power of Hashem, the infinite part of Hashem. But the fact is, it's still a finite. In other words, giving birth to our children, and even though it's many generations, but the fact is, it's still a finite level. And what that means is basically that the growth is still concealed to whatever the finite level is. But after the soul finishes its mission in this world, and now the soul leaves the body, it's leaving from the limitations of the world, what gets revealed? The internal part of Torah mitzvahs that you did in this world, that the internal part of Torah mitzvahs is actually infinite. And then you become the real mover. You become the real mover is because now you're going to a movement that's not limited. And that's why the day when a tzaddik passes away, and especially that you learn Chassidut, Pnimiyat Torah. It's called a Yom Hilula, it's a day of a celebration. Like we know the famous Hilula of the Rashbi, where Rashbi said you should celebrate. And the same thing the Rebbe says applies to any tzaddik that learned mysticism. Because when a person learns and is busy with learning mysticism, what gets revealed, the internal part, the infinite part, the idea of a real Hilula, the real celebration, and the real movement. And in the Chassidic discourse, he explains that when it comes to a Hilula, which we learned already before, celebration is the union of male and female. There's three ideas in general. Okay, so the first idea of a union of male and female is you have the union of male and female the way this on a spiritual level. What does that mean? In other words, the male and the female, it's the way they're unified before they come down to this world. In other words, for example, we know that before the soul comes down to this world, there are souls that are on the level of the male souls. And then there are female souls. And the union of the male and the female souls before they come down to this world is called the Hilula. Okay, that's the first level. So the union before it comes down to this world. Then you have the union of the male and female when it comes down to this world. And in there itself, there's two levels. There's the union of male and female literally. That's the first level of the union. And then there's the union of the soul and the body, which is just similar to the male and female. So that's the second level. Again, the first level is the way they unify before it comes down to the world. The second one, the way it comes down to this world. And again, there's two levels, male and female, and within each one, the soul and the body. And the third is when you have the Hilula, the celebration, which means the union of the soul, which is male, with the body, which is female, which is going to be like when Mashiach comes. And obviously that is the highest level of the celebration, because on there we're going to have the revelation of what? Of the essence of the infinite part of Hashem. Now, so again, just to recap before we go forward. So there's three levels of union. One is before it comes down to the world, one the way it's in this world, and one the way it's going to be like when Mashiach comes. Now, this revelation, the way it's going to be like when Mashiach comes, so like it's explained in many places in Chassidut, and that Chassidic discourse as well, that what's going to happen then is when Mashiach comes, what's going to get revealed, is drawing down the essence of Hashem, which happens by doing a mitzvah in this physical world. And like it's explained before, that what happens when a tzaddik passes away, it's called the Hilula, and especially one that learned a Pnimiyat Torah Chassidut, which basically is you're revealing the internal part and the infinite part of the mitzvah that they were busy doing in this physical world. But the fact is, today, in order to receive that revelation, unfortunately, the soul has to leave the body. But when Mashiach comes, The revelation is going to be literally into the physical body, and the revelation is going to be even on a higher level, because we're going to have the revelation of the essence of Hashem is going to be totally revealed into the physical world. So today, unfortunately, the body can't handle it. When Mashiach comes, the body ought to handle the power of revelation. Remember, you can say that from the reasons that the third level of the celebration is explained in the Chassidic discourse called La'avin Inyan Heilul the Rashbi, to understand the idea of the tremendous celebration of the Rashbi, is to teach us and to hint to us that the quality of a tzaddik, that their main work was, like the Rashbi, to teach and reveal the internal part of the Torah, is basically on two levels. In other words, one is that the day that they pass away is called the Yom HaHilula. It's the day of the celebration. Why? Because then what gets revealed is the internal part and the infinite part of Torah and mitzvahs, like we explained before at length. That's point number one. And point number two is that also through their spiritual work, to reveal Pnimiyat Torah, what gets revealed by them and through them to everyone else, the infinite part of Torah and mitzvahs, also in the soul, that's in the body, and in the physical body, just like it's going to be like Mashiach comes. So it's even deeper. But they have the power to reveal that in our body. And you can add that the revelation of these two ideas, in other words, also the idea of histalkus, the soul is leaving, and where is it found? In the soul, in the body. But in the beginning, obviously what gets revealed, the infinite part, in a way that the person basically has to be totally buttled. The person has to be totally nullified, which means that you lose your existence, and that's why you have a stalkut, because it gets revealed, but the body can't handle it, so the body has to go away. But what happens is, after that, what gets revealed is the infinite part in the person, just like it's going to be like what when Mashiach comes. Now, so what do we see from all this whole deep insight? That when it comes to hiluch, that comes to moving, in other words, having an elevation, an infinite level of elevation, Ein Sof, infinite and bligvul, which happens how? By learning Torah and doing mitzvos. So basically there's three levels. There are souls that, for example, they learn the revealed part of the Torah, Chumash, Mishnah, Talmud, etc. So guess what? You're connecting to the infinite part of Hashem, but the upgrade is concealed. Why? Because since you're learning chitzonius, the revealed part of Torah is only the external part of the Torah. So what happens then is you're learning Torah and doing the mitzvahs is finite. True, you're going to learn Torah, you do the mitzvahs, but it's finite. And therefore, to reveal the infinite part, which comes through Torah mitzvahs, then it's going to happen when Mashiach comes in the future. So the first level is you learn the revealed part of the Torah. You're definitely accomplishing it, but nothing everything is concealed, but gets revealed when Mashiach comes. However, there are souls that learn Pnimiyat Torah, Chassidut, like we're learning now. So then what happens is the revelation of the infinite part of the Torah of mitzvahs, which is basically the part that causes us to move, is also when the person passes away. And also down in this world, it can be in them when they totally nullify and they go out of themselves. And then you come to the highest level, at the revelation. The infinite part of Torah mitzvahs is also in themselves, and that obviously happens when Mashiach comes. You can say these three levels. Again, one is that when you learn Torah, you do mitzvahs, so obviously you're accomplishing, but it's concealed. The next level is when you're learning premium Torah, so then it gets revealed when you pass away, or when you totally nullify yourself, or the ultimate when Mashiach comes. You can say that these three ideas also applies to Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, that we also have similar to that three levels. In other words, that's as follows. The true level of Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, which means what? That the opposition is totally gone, like we learned before. How does that happen? So we learned before, how does that happen? When your Yechida, the highest level of your soul, gets revealed, then there's no opposition. Why? Because in the level of Chai, which is a very high level, but the fact is, the level of Chai, there's still opposition. So therefore, even though it's revealed, it doesn't totally take away all the negative wants and all the strange wants of the animal soul. But what happens is when a Chai is there, so therefore it's able to overpower, it wins over the animal soul. But in order to totally get rid of any want of the animal soul, you have to reveal the Yechida. Now, because when the Yechida comes out, the oneness of the soul comes out, there is no opposition. Like it says in the Talmud, that bevuah leso, there's no shadow. Why? Because on Yechida there's no shadow, there's nothing else. So what happens is when you reveal your Yechida, any opposition totally goes away. And that's why the real pada b'shalom nafshi, when is that going to be when Mashiach comes? Why? Because just like in a human being, in order to totally nullify the opposite, how do you do that? Like we said, by revealing the Yechida. The same thing also applies in the world. That specifically through Mashiach, which we know Mashiach is the global Yechida of all the levels. And when Mashiach is revealed, which is the Yechida, then any opposition is going to be totally gone. But nevertheless, since all the revelations of the future, like the Alter writes in Tanya, classical Perek Tanya, important to know this, chapter 37, he says everything that's going to happen in the future is what is dependent on our actions and our work in this world. So therefore, this idea of getting rid of anything opposition to God, which happens through revealing our Yechida, which is going to obviously be when Mashiach comes, but how does that happen in the future when you reveal your Yechida today? And by revealing your Yechida today, that's how all the wants, the strange wants of the animal souls go away. And especially that through those people that reveal their Yechida, and what it accomplishes and affects, totally nullifying anything opposition to godliness, and not only yourself and other people as well. And like we know, King David, by doing his work, he affected that I must say his enemy said to King David, Shalom, Shalom lecha v'shalom lazrecha. He was totally ready to have peace and with everybody. And not only that, but even the men of Avshalom that were basically in opposition to King David, they actually fought for the success of King David. And since now everything is obviously finite, we're living in a finite world. So therefore, the even idea of a person's willing to go on self-sacrifice from our Yechida, but the fact is that it's still finite because we're limited. And like we learned before, in reference to the revelation of the infinite part of Hashem, even when it comes to birth, but nevertheless, it's still a finite level. So what do we see from here? Even though that you have the revelation of the global Yechida, which is going to be like in the future, which comes by revealing our Yechida now, but nevertheless, the revelation of our Yechida now compared to the revealing the general Yechida, which like so when Mashiach comes, you can't compare, because the fact is, yes, you reveal your Yechida, the oneness of Hashem, but we're still in a finite level. Versus the revelation of the Yechida when Mashiach comes, it's off the charts. So the same thing also in reference to Pada b'shalom nafshi that was by King David. Now, since the redemption that King David had in the lay of peace was only in reference to a few people, like we mentioned before, I must say the people from Avshalom, etc. But the whole world wasn't ready to totally accept King David, because the fact is, in the world after, there was opposition. So therefore you can't compare to the redemption of peace what's going to be like in the future. There's no limits. Yes, King David reached a very, very high level. His enemies supported him, but only a few people. It wasn't everybody. But on the other hand, the real redemption and peace, what's going to be like Mashiach in the future when Mashiach comes, no limits, which happens through the redemption of King David now, which is, again, even though it's finite, so that's like the moving and the growing, like when a person learns Torah and does mitzvahs in this world, in the level of the revealed part of the Torah, which is the first level. So by learning Torah in the first level, that's like King David accomplishing it now. But the idea of Pada b'shalom nafshi, which is connected to the idea of the redemption of Yud Kislev, of the Mittler Rebbe, and the same thing also of the Alter Rebbe on the 19th of Kislev and the Friedrich Rebbe on the 12th of Tammuz. But since, what was that redemption? What was the redemption? By King David, it was a physical war. But with them, the redemption was about learning Chassidus, learning the concealed part of the Torah, which is referring to the Chida of Torah, the oneness of Torah. So therefore, the redemption that took place, and the peace that took place in this redemption has no limits. And it applies to everything. And that's why the 9th of Kislev, which is called the Yom Hilula of the Mittler Rebbe, is that comes an Arab, that comes an introduction to the real redemption. Why? Because through the fact that what was revealed The pada b'shalom nafshi came after the introduction of the spiritual service of the Hilula, which means the day of his passing, which was the day before, and the day of his passing, like we learned, is what? What's passing? The person totally is in a level of acceptance, on the level of passing away. Even though he passed away a year later, but the energy of the passing away was the day before, so he was able to draw in this idea, and it was the revelation of the being redeemed in peace, which is without limits, even into all those that have a connection to him. And therefore, in order to receive this powerful level, again, of the total acceptance, which allows us to experience the greatest level of peace, so you don't have to totally go out of yourself, and you don't have to totally disappear, but all we need to do is, we need to have the will. And the fact this represents every single person. Even before that you break out from your situation, you can redeem yourself in a way of pada b'shalom nafshi. You can have the ultimate level of peace and complete peace on the highest level of peace. And by doing that, we can actually redeem not only ourselves, we can actually redeem the whole world, and we can redeem the world with the redemption, the true redemption, the complete redemption through Mashiach Tzidkenu. And Rebbe finishes off beautifully, and he says, "B'mheira v'yameinu mamash." It should happen very, very quickly in our days. B'agala didan mamash, literally in our generation, in our time. So here you have a beautiful, beautiful, powerful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe, the Pala B'Shalom Nafshi, the power that we have. By learning previous Torah to create the ultimate humility that will give us the ultimate peace, similar to what's going to be like when Mashiach comes. And let's hope and pray that we have the coming of Mashiach. The next class will be in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua Tov.